In episode 6, Joe dives into Reese Montrose, trying to find out all he can to exploit any cracks that he might find. Unfortunately, though, he doesn't find any. He also hates the fact that because of Reese, he had to push Kate away. Kate has an event coming up at Sundry House, but she didn't invite Joe. Joe would have absolutely gotten an email had he not pushed her away. He actually overhears about the event when he opens up his door, and he overhears Kate and Roald discussing it. Roald won't be able to make the event because he's going away for a little bit. Lucky for Joe, though, he does end up getting an invite from Lady Phoebe. Lady Phoebe is planning on being in attendance, but she's going through a really difficult time. She has a little bit of PTSD from the Hampsey fire, but more importantly, she thinks she's being followed. She tells Adam this because the two had gotten back together, but Adam figures that it's just nothing more than her fans. Phoebe, though, is way more concerned. Adam tries to set her mind at ease and tells her to get ready for the party and have fun. Before Joe can head off to this party, he dives even more into researching Reese. He knows he has to find some way to get to him. The problem is, he always has somebody around him. He's either in public, has security. It's really, really difficult. As he's doing a little bit of research in the school library, Nadia comes up and interrupts him a little bit. She notices that Joe is listening to Reese's podcast, and she mentions how one of her friends had seen him doing a jog around a park one morning. That could be the opening that Joe needs. He heads home from the library and wants to dive more into attacking Reese at the park, much like he attacked Peach. But when he gets home, he's not alone because Reese has broken in. He's sitting there waiting for Joe. Joe is very taken aback, but he does get some information on why Reese killed who he killed. He killed Malcolm because he was blackmailing Reese regarding his gambling habit. Simon's exploitation of women was about to leak, and he would have been associated with it. Gemma was a drunken mistake that he made while he was married, and it was only a matter of time before she opened her big mouth. They all had to go. But now he needs the Eat the Rich story to go away. It's not good for his campaign. He didn't come here to chit-chat with Joe. He came here to give him an ultimatum. You have to go find somebody to pin this on. And if you don't, it's all going to be pinned on you. This gives Joe a whole lot to think about when he heads to Sundry House. He walks in, he sees Kate, but she ignores him. First person he actually talks to is Phoebe. She confides in Joe that she feels like she's being stalked. Joe uses this to his advantage, trying to find out from Phoebe which one of her friends would be more likely to be a killer so he can tag them with the murders. The person he comes up with is Connie. Phoebe tells Joe that Connie is already a suspect in the murders because he didn't have an alibi. While Phoebe doesn't think that Connie could have actually done it, for Joe and Reese, it doesn't matter. He's a mark. As he's talking to Phoebe, though, he looks to his right and he sees Kate with another guy, very handsy, very friendly. The guy's name is Nico. He's a bachelor and the heir to a shipping fortune. Phoebe has no idea what he's doing in London, and Joe doesn't care. What he does care about is he's really friendly with Kate, and it's pretty clear that the two do have a past. Joe tries to remind himself that Kate is a free woman, but it still irks the hell out of him. What Joe doesn't know is Nico is there to catch up with Kate. He tells Kate that he no longer works for his dad. Since he knows that she doesn't use the Lockwood name, he felt like there would be a connection. He's able to schmooze this connection into a private showing for Simon's art later that night. He'll be able to see the exhibit before anybody else. He'll also be able to purchase the art before anybody else, which is a pretty big deal. That night, Nico and Kate meet up, and Nico makes a substantial offer for all of the art before the exhibit even opens. The next day is the day of the actual exhibit opening, though. Before Joe goes, he meets with Connie. He was honestly surprised that Connie agreed to meet with him. But the more he talks to Connie, the more he feels bad for him. Connie shows up with a broken nose, looking like a dog who got in the trash. He knows that he's messed up time and time again. He knows that the cops are after him because he doesn't have an alibi. He also knows that he isn't capable of doing those things. The way that Joe can justify this to himself is that if he does frame Connie for murder, Connie will be forced to get clean, maybe change his life for the better. As he's looking at Connie in such a sad state, he gets a text message from Reese telling him to go back to his house, look in the freezer once he finds someone to pin this on. When Joe eventually does go home and look in the freezer, it's Simon's ear, sitting there waiting. That will be the item that they'll use to pin the murders on whoever. Reese also tells him that he has to do it tonight or the murders are on him. So that night, Joe is planning on pinning the murders on Connie. He knows that Connie will be at the art exhibit, so that's where he heads. With the ear securely in his pocket, he starts looking around for Connie. But the person who grabs his ear first is Adam. Adam apologizes for everything that went down in Hampstead, but he also needs something from Joe. Adam is planning on proposing to Phoebe, and he needs a good word. He knows that Phoebe values Joe's opinion, so he says to him, "Hey, when you see her, can you just put in a good word?" The thing that Joe and Phoebe don't know is Adam isn't doing this because of love. He was trying to sell his car collection to a buyer, and the buyer knew how cash-strapped that Adam was. He also knew who he was dating and knew that there was an out. He knew that if Adam married Phoebe, his financial woes are gone. So he gave him an option. He told Adam, "I'll give you a diamond ring to propose with, and if she says yes, then great. But if she doesn't, I get all of your cars for free." Adam, by the way, is planning on proposing the next day. As soon as Adam leaves Joe's company, Joe sees two familiar faces that he wasn't expecting to see today: Nadia and Edward, the two kids that hated each other in class. Edward's mom got them an invite. She wanted him to be more cultured, and Nadia realized that he wasn't all that bad. They both, though, do the "what are you doing here?" because Nadia knows that Joe isn't rich. She is completely floored, though, when he mentions how he has friends there, and one of those friends is Phoebe. Nadia is starstruck when she sees her. Joe tells her to walk over, grab a selfie, but he wants to get out of the conversation because he wants to find Connie. He turns the corner, though, and he doesn't find Connie. He runs into Kate. They're face-to-face. They're kind of forced to talk, and Joe starts complimenting Kate on the event. And Kate says, "You do realize you're giving mixed signals right now. You say you don't want to pursue anything, and then you come to my event." She tells him that he has to figure out what he actually wants, and then she walks away. That is when Joe sees Connie. He looks like he's passed out in the corner already. Joe feels like this is perfect. He's just sneak over, put the ear in his pocket, and done. But when he tries to, Connie wakes up. He's actually excited to see Joe because he's excited to tell him that he checked himself into rehab. He can't wait to start his new life, the clean and sober life. Even after this, Joe considers pinning the murders on Connie, but he can't bring himself to do it. He walks away from Connie and hears everybody clapping. He asks Blessing what's going on, and she tells him that Nico bought all of the art, which is a huge donation to Kate's foundation. As Joe is trying to eavesdrop on Kate and Nico's conversation, Nadia runs up and asks, "Hey, is everything okay? I just asked Lady Phoebe for a selfie and she was dragged out by some really rude waitress. Apparently the police need to speak to her?" This is the first that Joe is hearing about this, and he starts to panic a little bit. The police are there, but when he gets the group together and asks the police for some details, they have no idea what Joe or Nadia are talking about. They do a quick radio call, and nobody from the police department escorted Lady Phoebe out. All hope isn't lost. They know she couldn't have gotten far. They took an elevator downstairs. Sundry House has a bunch of hotel rooms in it, so they're probably in one of those. But Lady Phoebe is in danger. The woman who escorted her down told her that the police needed to speak to her privately alone, but this woman is a stalker. She had posed before as a photographer, but she is a super fan of Phoebe. She felt like with the police not doing their job catching the Eat the Rich killer, she had to take matters into her own hands and protect her sister. At least that's what she calls Phoebe. They're not related. After what Phoebe told Joe earlier in the day, he figures that this might be related. Because of Joe's background in this sort of thing, he's able to locate Phoebe pretty quickly. While the woman had locked the door, both Phoebe and Joe convince her to open it, and that's when they're able to overpower her. It's actually Phoebe who takes the knife away from her and yells at her. A few seconds after Phoebe does take the knife away, the cops come down, and they happen to find the ear that Joe planted on the woman. Now they have their mark for the Eat the Rich killer. Adam comes running down to make sure that Phoebe's okay, but this kidnapping wasn't a total loss. The woman told Phoebe that Adam was using her. He was completely broke, and that's why the staff was walking out. So Phoebe now feels like she's been lied to by her boyfriend. Because of that, Adam's the last person she really wants to see. With the police escorting the woman out, Phoebe looks at Joe and says, "You're the hero, again." And Nadia overhears that. Because curiosity got the best of her, she followed everybody downstairs, and she finds that comment really interesting. She starts to think that there's something off with Joe, like he knows more than he's letting on. And she's definitely going to keep her eye on him. The next day, right after his girlfriend was kidnapped, Adam decides this will be a great day to propose. But she said no. After finding out about all his financial troubles, she wants him to get his affairs in order before he makes such a commitment. Well, that relationship is on the rocks. There's another relationship that seems to be blooming. Joe looks over and sees Kate and Nico about to hook up in Kate's apartment, but then they stop. And Joe can sense that they're fighting. They're fighting because as Kate was starting to hook up with Nico, she looked down and saw that Nico got a text message from her father. She realizes that Nico is now working for her dad. She feels completely betrayed by Nico. She no longer wants to sell him any of the art. And while Nico pleads his case, she kicks him out. That's the opening that Joe needed. He waits a little bit of time and then heads over to Kate's apartment. It takes a whole lot of words, but he basically tells her, "I want you." And the two end up hooking up that night. When he gets back to his apartment, sex hair and all, he is pissed. Not because of the sex, that was cool, but because Reese Montrose is sitting in his apartment with a crap-eating grin on his face. The frustration level for Joe is reaching a boiling point. He sits down and says, "Okay, Reese, what now? This is over, right?" And Reese laughs and says, "Over? I mean, we're done dealing with the little people, if that's what you mean." There is one last thing. You'll love it. It's Kate's father. We're going to have so much fun killing him. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.